right.
All right. So, hey, I'm Tammy O'Brien with 14 Karat Whole Foods, and I just want to welcome you here today for our first time special event on Facebook. And what we're going to be doing is kicking off with Jeremy Pons, and we're going to be talking about how to boost your immune system and prepare for the fall and autumn uh, winter season coming up with the flus and the colds, and to top it off, now that we have COVID-19 to deal with as well, that we're up against. So Jeremy, I'd love for you to start off by introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I really appreciate you having me. This is awesome. This is a really cool avenue where we can kind of connect with people, and so I'm really thankful to that we have technology like this that usually works.
Yes.
And so a little bit about me. I am a functional and integrative nutritionist, licensed dietitian here in the Midlands. I have own Path of Life Nutrition, which is a nutrition and wellness business in the Midlands. And so I serve people kind of all over the Lexington, Columbia area and other regions, and work a lot with kids and adults and just lots of different health issues, everything from, from just normal kind of eating healthier to helping people with metabolic issues and immune issues and things of that nature, and just doing the stuff we love to do to help people live the best life. And so that keeps me busy. And then I also stay pretty busy with 5 kids and another one on the way. And
Oh my gosh.
so we're enjoying just parenting and all the craziness that comes with that. And so, when it comes to immunity, we do the things we're going to talk about today, because with kids, you're always running into something, and somebody's always going to be getting sick or getting sniffles or whatever. And so learning to roll with those punches is something we do on a day-to-day basis.
Wow, that is fantastic. And congratulations on the new one on the way.
Yes,
That's
thank you.
wonderful. You are a busy man indeed. And Jeremy, we have had you in the store before, and it's successful events. And now that we can't do those in store, this is just another way, like you said, to reach out to people, educate,
Yep.
give back to the community in ways that we can help support. So what we did do is that we put this out there for customers that we're going to be viewing today, and those were some questions that they submitted. So I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start, and I'm going to dive into some questions and let you talk to us a little bit about immunity from your expertise, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, very good. Okay, so I have a question. When we're talking about immunity, can you explain in a nutshell what immunity is?
Yeah, it's ultimately, if we think about immunity, we're thinking about they're the guards on the wall. Okay, when you are trying to protect a city, you need people to guard the inside, and
Mm-hmm.
and so their job is kind of twofold or threefold. One is you have the watchmen that actually find and see a threat that's happening, and that's part of your immune system. So it's the molecules that float around that identify something that's an invader, something that's a pathogen, something that's a bacteria, virus, fungi, whatever that thing may be, and it sends up the alert signals, the red alert, and then brings in the reinforcement. Then you got the second wave or the second layer, and that's essentially your army, the people that come in and fight it. And that's when we think about things like white blood cells and lymphocytes and eosinophils and all these other pieces of it. Those things come in and they do the work of attacking and killing the actual invading, force, whatever that is. And then the third wave is
Right.
kind of the cleanup wave, the wave that comes in, and we think about, like if you get an infection on your skin, the first thing that happens is you have pain and blood. The second thing that happens is your body deals with it and you'll see inflammation. The third thing is you will sometimes see these like collections of, fluid of sorts, white fluid, whatever. That's actually the cleanup crew whose job is to come in and like grab those things and neutralize them so you can remove them. And so immunity is the process of how your body does that. And it's not it's a very complex thing. We could talk for hours on that whole idea. People spend their
Boy,
whole lives
yes.
studying this. It's unbelievable. And there's a lot we still don't know. And I think one thing the COVID crisis has shown us is that there's always so much more to learn, because there are
True.
things you realize as you go through a new infection that you did not know before that will help you do better in the future. And your immunity also has kind of two layers to it. One is the innate immune system, the other is the adaptive immune system. The innate immune system being the part that hits first, like when you get a sore throat and a runny nose, when you're coming down with a cold, that's your innate immune system kicking in. The adaptive immunity
Right.
is more things like T cells and beta lymphocytes and stuff of that nature that come in on a deeper level and sort of bring in the tail end to help fight in a stronger way. But also the more important thing for the adaptive immunity is those T cells will write a memory, like a code book in your body to store hopefully for the rest of your life, so that if you ever come up to that infection again, you're going to fight it better the second time.
Wow.
And that built-in blueprint, or that built-in DNA coding with your T cells, does some wonderful things when it's balanced. Unfortunately, it's also the thing that when people have autoimmunity tends to kind of get out of whack and can attack the wrong thing. So a lot of stuff there, but kind of in a nutshell, that when I think of immunity, those are kind of the pieces that I put in that puzzle.
Boy, we are amazing, aren't we?
I'm telling you, so complex.
Our bodies are incredible. All right, we'll move on to question number 2. Why would it be important to strengthen your immune system during this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point it's funny, because in years past when we had the flu that would come in, people would say, "Oh, harump, that's true. We should, do a
Right.
couple of things, maybe get a shot, whatever." Now I think people are a lot more aware of how important your immune system really is, and nothing has shown that in such massive, stark contrast the way this virus has. And as we get further into, we talk in the next few minutes, we'll kind of talk a little more detail on this. But ultimately, what you're seeing is there are people who will get this virus, this COVID virus, and they never knew they had it. They just go about life, nothing changes, they're positive, they brought it in,
Right.
the body neutralized it, they went on about life and never got sick. And other people have died. And it's the same virus, but in different systems. And so if that doesn't show you the importance of immunity, I don't know what will. And it just drives
So
home
true.
the idea that a healthy body with a healthy immune system is one of, if not the most important tool we can have as we're walking through a day-to-day, life, that helps us to stay well and live well. So, to me, it's important when you roll into these months in the winter months, because strengthening it against things like the flu just needs to happen anyway. The flu tends to start around October, picks up through the winter, and then usually ends around March, because there's a lot of seasonal things that affect that. But then you're going to have cold viruses, other cold viruses. You're going to have stomach flus, kids in school, all this sort of stuff. And, those are almost unavoidable. And
it's like bombs.
yes, I know. It's like one after another. You're like, oh, what's the next thing that's going to hit? And you almost feel like,
I know.
wow. But ultimately what you see in that is that winter brings a coalescence of factors in that make sickness more likely. And so special attention to your immune system in this season is going to really, really help you as you're rolling into winter and spring. And
Absolutely.
everything from, colds to stomach viruses to the flu, really everything in between. It's just super important.
Yes, I agree. I agree. All right, we'll scoot on to the next one. When you think about nutrition and diet, what is your idea of using food as medicine for immunity?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And that kind of comes back to, looking at how you build strong immunity and what pieces come into that puzzle. And one of the things that tends to happen through the winter is people's diets go down. Okay. So they're eating generally
Bingo.
speaking, healthier things through the spring and summer, most people. But as you get into
Mm-hmm.
fall, it's like this rolling, continual thing, starting with Halloween to where you roll from Halloween and then
Yes.
into Thanksgiving and then into Christmas,
Sugar.
New Year's. And by the time January comes, everybody's a wreck.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like
I mean, well,
January,
even February with Valentine's Day. I
yeah,
mean, come
exactly.
on.
And January 1st rolls around and people are, my phone's ringing off the hook. They're like, oh my gosh, I've got to fix I've got to get everything back up. And I'm thinking, that's great. Let's do it. But, we could have done this 3 months ago.
Yeah, yeah. We could have prevented all this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But ultimately, when it comes to diet, there's some specific principles that matter. And that is, um, I harp on this all the time because I deal with so many people. If I look around, I would tell you that right now in this country, 8 out of 10 people have a digestive system that doesn't work properly. Um,
Yes,
it's massive. It's epidemic, and there's a
it
thousand
is.
reasons for that, and we've talked about that in other talks. But if you step back and look at immunity, one thing that gets missed and cannot be overlooked is that your gut comprises between 70 and 80% of the power and the clout of your immune system. And that's everything from
Yeah.
being the barrier, the watchman on the wall, to creating molecules that feed into that immune response. Therefore, a healthy gut means a healthy immune system. An unhealthy gut means an unhealthy immune system. You cannot separate
That's
the two.
right.
And when we look at autoimmune diseases, we always see digestive things and autoimmune things go together. It's just the way it is. Um,
Yes.
so if I'm looking at diet, then the thing that protects my immunity is also the thing that protects my gut, and those are going to be, you know, with some variation individually, it's going to be a diet that is high in plant foods, lots of fiber, lots of antioxidants,
Yeah.
lots of nutrient dense foods, and it's going to be low in the things that directly suppress and hit your immune system, namely refined sugar, processed flours, processed foods, preservatives and additives and stuff that, I mean, even chlorinated water that basically you drink it in and the chlorine is constantly hitting your bacteria and knocking them down so they can't get up and put up a good fight. I
So
mean,
true.
all these things that when you put them together, if you can increase the nutrients and the quality of the foods you're eating with lots of like I said, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, phytochemicals, all of that, you're feeding your immune system. If
Yes.
you if you increase or eat more junk food and sugar and fried food and all this other stuff, you're suppressing your immune system, you're hurting it and giving it more work to do. And so
Yes.
optimal to me just means eating good food, eating it in season, and trying to eat it as close to the way God created as possible, eating basically whole foods in a way that
Yes.
they're meant to be, which is what you
I
guys
totally,
sell. So it's cool that when you think about it, it's not that complicated. It's just that you
yes.
have to be willing to actually take that step and do it.
They have to have the willpower to do it. And I totally agree. That is such a good response. Okay, so getting into some customer questions and something that we are all curious about, are there certain supplements that you would recommend to help strengthen the immune system?
Yeah, for sure. And at this point, it's interesting because prior to COVID, I would list a lot of things, and a few people knew these things, and a lot of people didn't.
Yeah,
Now, if you're paying attention, even Dr. Fauci says, "Oh yeah, I take vitamin C, D, and zinc." Like you can't
yes.
deny it at this point. A lot of people have tried to
Finally,
yeah, finally. A
yeah,
lot of people have tried to downplay these things, but when you're looking at immunity, vitamin C and D are crucial, both of those.
mm-hmm.
I would say of the two, vitamin D is more important. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute or so. But they're both important, and I would say all your vitamins are important, but the others, it's easier to keep enough of them on hand, whereas your body, when it's hitting sickness, it needs more vitamin C and more vitamin D, and same thing with
Yes,
zinc. Zinc. So vitamin C, D, and zinc are definitely some of my top recommendations. Zinc, if you look at the actual data, Vitamin C does not prevent the cold really that effectively, okay? But zinc does, and zinc is extremely effective at helping block and protect your body from getting a cold, coming down with viruses, all of those things, because it strengthens that innate immune response. It builds up those things, and it improves the ability of your body to recognize invaders and attack them before they become a problem. So if I'm looking at a preventative, zinc becomes very, very important for that. So those three are crucial. If I were going to pick one out of all of them that are the most important, it would definitely be vitamin D, just because vitamin D not only strengthens the immune system, it balances the immune system, which is even more important. And it's a hormone, not a vitamin, which means that by nature of that, its effective is a lot more powerful. It's going to have a bigger impact in a lot more places than vitamins do. So vitamins are those three, or vitamins and minerals will be those three. And then if I were going to add a couple of other things to it, I would say elderberry is definitely on my list, because it is a modulator, it is a strengthener, it is a nutritious and nutrient-dense food. And it just so happens to be one of the most, if not the most effective and proven effective preventative and treatment actually for the flu. So we're coming into flu season. When it comes to flu, there's study after study after study. I mean, you can read it. It's been going for 15 plus years. It's very well established at this point. Elderberry really, really helps with that. And one other nutrient I would throw in the mix that I like to use for both the food and medicine side is quercetin. And quercetin is an antioxidant. It's found in a lot of foods like apples and onions and asparagus and all these other delicious foods. Interestingly enough, I didn't know until I was trying to research stuff in February for COVID that elderberry is one of the highest quercetin foods that you can eat. And so,
wow, I did not know that.
It makes perfect sense to me now, looking back at it and wondering why is it that it has such a good effect on the respiratory system. And the reason is quercetin. Quercetin is this huge strengthener of your lungs. It not only helps reduce allergic reactions, so if you're thinking about seasonal allergies, it's helpful, but it's an antioxidant that actually buffers damage to the lungs, so that whether you have asthma or COPD or cystic fibrosis or just a cold, it's going to help your lungs respond in a better way, in a stronger way, and in a way that reduces inflammation. And that reduction in inflammation is huge anytime. But when you're thinking about something like COVID, it can be the difference between being extremely sick and hospitalized and being able to weather it well at home. So quercetin makes my list as one of the ones I think are most important. And not coincidentally, it's also very good for your gut, because what's good for the immunity is good for the gut is good for the immunity. So they kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely. So speaking to that, to quercetin, would you take that on a regular basis? Or just
I would
if
say,
you were feeling?
It's one of those things that I would think I consider more seasonal, unless you have something like chronic allergies. So for people with chronic allergies, it can be helpful in that it's a natural antioxidant that happens to have an antihistamine effect on top of it. So then it can also help reduce.
That is fantastic.
Reduce allergic reactivity essentially to seasonal things. And so you'll see in a lot of your seasonal formulas, you're going to see quercetin as one of those ingredients, because along with N-acetylcysteine and vitamin C and bromelain and all these other things, it helps with that whole histamine reaction. So for people who don't have that, my recommendation is, take it maybe during the flu season to kind of help, or if you feel like you're coming down with something, take it, and then you don't really need it on a regular basis.
That makes sense. That's great.
Eating foods that have quercetin in them really is even more important.
Yes, that was a good list of foods too. All right, so we're gonna take a look at vitamin D. So there have been some recent studies that support how it helps immunity, and I know you just spoke to that a little bit, specifically with the cold and flu. Could you just expand on this a little bit more?
Yeah, so vitamin D is is a prohormone, which means that it actually turns into something called calcitriol when it goes into your body, which is a hormone, and it's a hormone that modulates bone density, tooth health, immunity, skin, hair, so many different functions that have to do with the way that your body um, modulates, essentially, which means balance. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, the way that it does things in a balanced way. And it's involved in so many things I couldn't list. I think they said somewhere around 30,000 reactions in your body, but it's used everywhere, which is the way hormones are. They're typically used
Yes.
everywhere in the body in minute amounts. And so, as such, vitamin D has this massive effect on balancing the immune system. And when we think about immunity, it's more important to balance than to strengthen, because the truth is you're made with an immune system that fights things. Okay.
Yes.
If it becomes overreactive, you go into something called autoimmunity. When it becomes
Right.
underreactive, you go into things that are suppressive type disorders. And probably the most famous example that's the kind of biggest and worst one would be AIDS, HIV. It's an overall
Right.
suppression of the immune system. But in between there's all these different ones. And vitamin D helps you, no matter what it is you're fighting, it helps you fight it in a balanced way, which because of that creates much better outcomes with whatever you're dealing with. Because remember, we talked about immunity being the attack force and then the cleanup force and all these things coming together. What
Right.
can happen in an imbalanced immune system, particularly when a person is inflamed and ill, has a lot of comorbidities and things like obesity, diabetes, stuff like that, is their body starts out up here with inflammation. When you add the infection, it goes off the charts. All of a
Right.
sudden you have this systemic inflammatory response that can overwhelm the body such that it cannot get rid of the waste as fast as it's creating it. Well, enter COVID, that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what happened. What happened with COVID was people would get the infection and the attack would go so heavy in the lungs, their body couldn't rid itself of it fast enough. The junk and waste builds up, creates pneumonia, hypoxia, and all this list of things, and then you end up on a ventilator or dying.
Wow.
And it's tragic, but it started with an imbalanced immune system. It started with an immune system that was too inflamed. It started out way up here. So
Right.
vitamin D, and we were just talking about this earlier, vitamin D, now that we're a few months out, we theorized it would help COVID. Now we have a lot of data to prove this, that deficiency makes you
Yes.
I was trying to pull the numbers and I'll pull them later and share, but between 20 and 80 times more likely to die from COVID
Yes.
if you're vitamin D deficient.
That's right.
That is so far beyond the realm of significant. It's hard to even put that into words. It's incredibly, extremely, unbelievably, vitally important. You cannot separate the two. At this point, there's enough data to
Yeah.
show that vitamin D has a massive protective effect against COVID, and we already knew it had a massive protective
Yeah.
effects against the flu. And the reason for that is that vitamin D brings that overreaction down and creates balance. Balance creates a good response. A good response creates a good outcome. So one of the things that we were looking at earlier, I was looking at a study that had a study that measured essentially an intervention of vitamin D versus no vitamin D in an ICU setting, and ultimately found that in that in that study, those who had the vitamin D intervention had 2% death rate, as opposed to, sorry, excuse me, those who got treated for it and either went to ICU or didn't. So that's the difference. It was a 2% ICU admission for those who had vitamin D at given, and a 50% ICU admission for those who didn't. 50% and 2% is so huge.
That's mind
It's
blowing.
mind blowing. And in the non-vitamin D group, there were several deaths. In the vitamin D group, there was 0 deaths. Okay, so
0.
there's going to be more of this that comes out later, I'm sure. But all
I
that
do
to
too.
say, vitamin D is absolutely vital. And this is the time when people need to be supplementing, because as you get into October, people get less sunlight. They're inside more. The days are getting shorter. People don't get enough
Yes.
sunlight as it is. and flu season hits. So it all comes together at one time. So right now is the time you want to start supplementing through the winter to make sure you're protecting yourself the best way you can.
That is fantastic. I couldn't agree more. All right, so we had another customer sent in a question about supplements. I've been taking calcium sorbate vitamin C powder because I heard C will help my immune system and keep my body strong, so I won't get a cold or the COVID, the coronavirus. Will taking vitamin C really help?
Yeah, so kind of tying into what we were saying earlier, I think vitamin C is good, but it's interesting because there's been a lot of debate on vitamin C, and
Yeah.
ultimately the data has always, since Linus Pauling started his research way back when, it's always been back and forth. One person will say it's good, another person will say it's not, another person will say it's good, and ultimately I look at it differently because I want to come back and say, what is it good for, and let's take it from that. What it's not good for, in my opinion, is preventing the cold, and that's been disproven for years, okay?
Right.
But there is a reason to take it. The reason is that in an overall way, it does strengthen your immune response, but I actually find that vitamin C is much more important for strengthening your body versus strengthening the immune system. What I mean by that is the gland in your body that holds and uses the most percentage and amount of vitamin C is actually your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands are responsible for your stress response. So, case in point, I had some people that I knew close to me several years ago whose family came down with whooping cough, and it's having a resurgence in different places, and they unfortunately got a hold of it and went through their whole family. Everybody was fine, but the infant was struggling. I mean, they really got close to being hospitalized a couple of times. Well, what they found was in treating it, and I've found this throughout my whole career, throughout my whole life, is when you're on a sort of normal basis, your body doesn't need much vitamin C. It might need 100, 200, 500 milligrams, whatever, depending on the day. When you get sick, and by the way, what is the marker that people say how much is too much vitamin C? What do they say? Right? You go to the bathroom, okay? So too much vitamin C sends you to the bathroom and gives you loose stools to get rid of the extra, and that's when you know you've had too much.
That's right.
If you've got that reaction, you should back off on the dose, okay? When someone gets sick, remarkably, I have seen over and over again, people can go from taking 200 milligrams to 10,000 or more milligrams a day and have zero GI reaction.
Wow.
What that tells me is that when you're sick, your body is sucking it in like a sponge because it needs it for that extra strength. Now, fast forward to, I was looking at research trying to figure out, okay, what's the sort of mechanism that it works? Well, actually, vitamin C helps your body create catecholamines, which are adrenal hormones. And in a way, this is not the same, so don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying it's a steroid. But vitamin C does strengthen your body like a steroid. Which means, which means that in the case of a crisis, of a sickness, your body can suck in and use vitamin C at these mega dose rates, just like when they give people steroids for whatever sickness, and they're using it and using it and using it, and it's really helping them. And then when they're done with that sickness, they back off because they no longer need it. Vitamin C helps your body in some of the same ways, but not like a steroid in that it's not a hormone and it doesn't, create the same side effects. So all that to say, I believe vitamin C is very important once you are sick. And that once you are sick, you can take mega doses and your body's going to use it and it's going to thrive with it. And then once you are over it, you can back off and you don't need it that much anymore. And so it becomes one of these tools that help you in the response and will improve your response. And one of the things it does as well is vitamin C is an antihistamine. So when you're dealing with anything with the lungs and the respiratory system, when you're sick, those high doses help you walk through it better. So that's kind of my take on vitamin C.
You know what? That is a great take. That is a different approach, and I like it. I like it a lot. All right, so we're going to go on down to the next question. So you mentioned elderberry as a recommendation of a supplement. One customer had a question about immunity and how to address these cytokine storms related to COVID. Various sources recommended against using elderberry because of the potential of this to increase the cytokine storms. What do you know about this?
Yeah, so I actually got this question a few months ago. I think it was in March, and that's when it started circulating
Mm-hmm.
in the public
A
that
good question.
it's like take elderberry. No, don't take elderberry. It's going to kill you. And ultimately,
Yeah.
I went to go look it up, and I was like, okay, what is the story here? Because if it is, there are certain things that will overstimulate your immune system and would be bad in a situation like
Yes.
COVID, where you don't want an overreaction. Okay. Well, I looked it up, and I pulled up the studies that they had shown, and ultimately what it boiled down to was they had a couple of animal studies, and I think one in vitro, which means petri dish study, showing that if you did this and this and this and these conditions, you would create a higher level of cytokines in whatever that response was. Well, what was interesting about it was, again, isolated, not related to a disease, animal study, petri dish. All of those are markers for what we in scientific research call interesting, anecdotal. Now we need to do clinical trials. Like you don't take information like that and make decisions from it. You take information like that and you do more research to figure out what's going on.
Right.
And so a couple of things I found was, one, nobody else was able to replicate those studies, which tells you that was probably a bad study. Secondly, when I looked at actual clinical trials of actually using elderberry in actual sickness situations with actual coronavirus, okay, which was like MERS and SARS and things that existed a long time before COVID, elderberry had
Right.
really good response, and it improved the outcome. So it was basically a nothing. There was no reason for it. It's one of those things where misinformation gets started and then it spreads like wildfire. And I actually am comfortable enough to even recommend, based on what I know about elderberry, I can recommend it even to autoimmune patients in certain amounts, not like as a normal chronic thing, but like if you get sick, taking it for a week or so, I think it's safe enough for that because it
Right.
modulates more than it stimulates. Modulation always more important, and so it helps your body do its own job better rather than pushing it up to a level it shouldn't be at. And so in that respect, it has always, since I started recommending in February, always stayed on my list as a really good food to eat.
I think that is great. I love that. All right, so I know we're drawing close to the end here, but we do have a couple of more questions. This one would be, how can we best approach immunity and cold COVID when also suffering from autoimmune, kind of like what you were speaking of with the elderberry, with that kind of approach as well?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I know that's something we can't really fully cover. We don't have enough time. You could do a whole talk on just that.
I
Maybe
know.
that's an idea, for down the road.
That
But ultimately,
absolutely.
it's going to come back to balance. The best way with an autoimmune disease is to find and maintain balance. And so balance means keeping yourself from being too suppressed and too overreactive, getting that happy medium.
Right.
Vitamin D is vital in that process. So for somebody in that situation, I would say their vitamin D status is far more important than the average person. So that would be number one. The second
Yeah.
would be to make sure that you are doing as much as possible to create really balanced gut health. and making sure you're eating those good foods and creating good balance. The third would be
Such a
making sure
key.
that your other factors, medication and lifestyle things, are balanced. So a lot of people, interestingly enough, this isn't, it's not popular to talk about some things, but one of the things that many people in autoimmune diseases are on a chronic basis to maintain their autoimmune response is hydroxychloroquine, aka Plaquenil is the brand name, and they have been for years
Yes.
because it basically keeps their system balanced. In those people, when they've done studies on a few that have gotten COVID, they had a really good response because they were kept in a balanced state. They didn't overreact. So take that for what you will. The whole point being, when the autoimmune problem was in balance, they reacted like a healthy person. And so that to me is the key. And
Wow.
lifestyle stuff as well, sleep and exercise and all the other stuff that makes a big difference.
Absolutely. That's a good one. All right. A lot of questions about vaccines have come up as well, surrounding the flu and the COVID. But a few things people have asked is number one around this is, are they safe?
Yeah. Well, I would say, I guess, going to the flu vaccine first, because that one's easy. We obviously have data on it. We don't on this new vaccine, so I'll let people interpret that how they want. But
Yes.
the flu vaccine it has been proven very safe. I mean, I don't know of anything really when you look at data and outcomes of people who've gotten the flu vaccine and their outcomes after that. I've really seen nothing that shows they're unsafe. I will tell you, for people who are concerned about heavy metals and additives and things like that, you can actually get an additive-free flu vaccine. There are plenty of people who do them. I think I've gotten one at Costco, if I remember right, in the past. But lots of pharmacies will offer those to people who are either don't want to get exposed to heavy metals or want an egg-free one. Those are an option as well. But my ultimate answer to that is, really talk to your doctor about those things. That's something that they can kind of advise people on what is that safety profile and what are you comfortable with, and is it going to be effective and helpful for you in your situation. And I think when it comes to the COVID vaccine, my answer is I have no idea. I don't honestly.
Yeah.
Some people will say they have an idea, but I think at this point it's so early in the game. I don't know how you would know. We haven't really vaccinated thousands and thousands of people to come back 2 and 3 years later and figure it out. So, I think every person's going to have to make that choice for themselves and talk with your doctor and, kind of make a decision together.
I think that's a good answer. And I didn't know there were so many different options for flu vaccines. Okay, so are there alternatives? And if so, what are those? And I think that's meaning like alternatives to, I guess, what we were speaking to. Instead of doing vaccines, what can we do?
Yeah. Well, there's always alternatives. Anything in life is a risk-benefit analysis of, what risk am I willing to take versus what benefit am I thinking I'm going to get, and so every person needs to make that decision for themselves. And I would say the alternatives, if you're looking at what are the ways other than a vaccine to improve your immune system, it is just to take care of yourself. And so the alternative is to have a healthy immunity and to strengthen it and to find balance in that immune system and to be confident in that immune system and be confident in your ability to weather things that come your way, because COVID is not going to be the last thing that hits people, unfortunately. And there's the flu that comes every year and it kills people, of course. And there's so many other things, stomach viruses and, food poisoning and all this other stuff. And so the ultimate question to that, or answer to that, always comes down to the most important thing, vaccine or no vaccine, is to have a strong immune system. Because even if you take someone with a weak immune system and vaccinate them, it doesn't mean they're going to have immunity to whatever that is. In fact, there is a failure percentage rate for vaccines of every kind. There always has been, because if you vaccinate someone with a suppressed or imbalanced immune system, their reaction to that vaccine may not create the antibodies they were going for. So they may, inject it and then it's not really working 5 months, 6 months, a year down the road. So unless you have a good immune system, nothing else really works well anyway.
Right. That's a good point. All right. So how about this is our final question in our closing.
Yeah.
That what would you say are the big 3 things that best help build and maintain good immunity?
Oh, that's such a good question. So, if I'm looking at big picture, and this is speaking as a nutritionist, I would actually put the big 3 as something bigger than food, something bigger than nutrition. And that would be, those 3 would be sleep, exercise, and stress reduction. Okay, so sleep and I'll say, well, sleep, exercise. I
Yeah.
should say sunlight slash stress reduction, and ultimately it's the idea of being outside and unplugging, which kind of goes with exercise. Some of these are
So
melded
true.
together, but here's the thing: is that no matter what research you look at, no matter what population of people you look at, and if you think about your own life, the reason I find that people tend to really get sick is they get stressed out, run down, tired, and overwhelmed, and their body goes down, down, down until it gets to a point and it gets sick. And so if you look at research, sleep deprivation is one of the biggest things that actually causes sickness. And when you look at shift workers and overnight workers and all this sort of thing, there's so many things metabolically that get out of balance when you don't get sleep that it's really hard to maintain a good immune system without it. That is that is one of the reasons
Yes.
why parents struggle to stay well. Is it's not that they're not trying to
Yes.
do everything right, but when you're not getting enough sleep and you're going 100 miles an hour and you've got 15 things that kids are going to, and you're trying to get healthy meals and
Yep.
and all of that. If you don't pay attention to the basics, then the other things won't matter. And so same thing with
That's
exercise.
right.
If I'm eating well and I'm not exercising, enough or at all, my immune system isn't getting a workout. Your immune system actually gets a workout and gets boosted every time you exercise. And that's, across the board, no matter whether it's walking or running or weightlifting or swimming or whatever it may be. So getting that exercise is an instant injection of immune cells. It actually boosts those numbers. So,
Yes.
so that's super duper important. And then that kind of rolls into this whole idea of stress and sunlight and fresh air and all of that, because exercise reduces stress levels and gives you sunlight if you exercise outside. But the stress, again, if I'm eating well and I'm exercising, but I'm super stressed out, that may be, I probably should have put that at number one, that may be the biggest factor that actually makes people sick, because I could throw 100 studies at you to show that every time stress hormones go up, immunity goes down. It's like a seesaw. Stress up, immune down. It does not matter what else
Yes.
in life is going on. The more stressed you are, the more your immune system goes down. There's my soapbox for why I have been so frustrated with the official responses in this country and around the world. The best way to stress somebody out and kill their immune system is
Yes.
to tell them they have to stay inside, can't work, can't play, can't go to the gym, can't take a walk. Like, that is the best way to shoot somebody's immune system and destroy it. And so we've got a whole nation of people. If I'm reading correctly and I'm talking to my patients, and this is true, we've got a whole nation of people right now who are frazzled, who are stressed out, who are anxious, who are
Yeah.
almost traumatically stressed. And so when I look at that, I go, was it worth it? Like, what numbers? If you look at the numbers, I wonder what would have happened if we had taken a different approach and allowed people more freedom to get out and do life. Would their immune systems have protected them in a better way? And I think the answer is yes, but that's my personal opinion. Um, and so
Sure.
along with that, sunlight kind of goes in that thing, because there are certain people who got really criticized for saying, we should look into whether sunlight would kill this virus. Well, guess what? They've been using UV light to kill viruses in ICUs for years and years and years. It's always been effective. It kills every virus. If you go out in the sun, it
Yes.
kills basically every virus known to man within minutes. So the best thing I can do is get out of my house and go out in the fresh air and get sunshine and take a walk and just relax and breathe that deep fresh air in. And in those conditions, viruses don't survive. They just don't. They survive in
Yes.
close contact, close quarters, close people, in closed spaces where there's no good air
Mhm.
circulation. Like, those are all the things that do it. Um, and so if I'm looking at the big three, I mean, it's stress, it's activity and getting outside, and it's sleep. And I would put food actually as a number four, because it's super important, and I believe it's very
Yes.
vital. But I I can't out eat a bad lifestyle. Just can't.
No, you really can't.
So that's kind of my big three, and my encouragement to people is get out and get some fresh air, get some sunshine, get some relaxation and stress relief and exercise, and make sure you're sleeping. Turn the news off. I mean, don't worry about the
Yes.
garbage. Turn the news off and actually get good sleep, and
Yeah.
the immune system will strengthen itself. And when you add these diet and supplement things to it, it's a winning combo.
I totally agree, Jeremy. That is fantastic. Great information. And I think we've covered a wide range of topics with some great questions from our viewers. And, we look forward to doing this again in the future. And we appreciate your input and your help.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. And I'm happy to be able to hopefully connect with folks, give people some insight, some perspective, and just some good, helpful tips to help keep us all safe, because we're rolling into winter. Winter's coming,
Yes.
and I think it's good for people to have a perspective of wellness as we go into this, not a perspective of sickness, because there is an end point to the COVID virus. There's an end point to the flu virus. At some point,
Yes.
you've got to get back to living and living well. And I think these are the things that really are most important in that.
Very true. Speaking into hope and not into fear, I think it's really important, and that we have a lot of control. I think that's the big thing that for people to take away from this is that you have a lot of control over your health, and this can empower you to go forward.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely.
No need to be a victim. Trust your body and feed and take care of it, and it will protect you.
That's right. We're incredibly made.
Yes.
Jeremy, thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
And we'll look forward to doing some more of this in the future.
All
And
right.
thank you guys for
Awesome.
tuning in.
Yes, thank you guys. Take care.